In the underground lair of an upstart publisher, in the underground lair of an upstart publisher, in the underground lair of an upstart publisher, in the underground lair of an upstart publisher.
Hart Fisher of Boneyard Press, which publishes adult-oriented comics.
I've been reading comic books and drawing my own books since I was 5 years old. So I love comics. I have a deep love for the medium and the art. I love artwork. So the thing that people might not know about Boneyard Press is we discovered so many artists. We discovered John Cassaday. We discovered Duncan Rouleau. We discovered Albert Halasso. We discovered, essentially, in America, Dimitri Patelis, who went on to work for Coca-Cola and major brands. I was known in the industry as a tastemaker. I had a really good eye for talent.
Yeah, that eye.
I have an eye for talent. It's how I discovered Gerard Way for My Chemical Romance. I'm his first publisher, and I mentored him when he was 15 years old, and he was working for Boneyard. And I got him on the Sally Jesse Raphael show with me. So I got him in the audience with his mom. You know, he used to talk to his mom.
What a nice guy.
He was a kid. Well, he was getting bullied a lot, and she was trying to figure out what to do about it. And it's a thing. We've all dealt with bullying. I got bullied a lot as a kid. That's part of why I grew to be such a ferocious guy. Because I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I was a comic book nerd, and I was an honor roll nerd. And so
how dare you be smart and interested in artistic endeavors.
Yeah, and so the jocks didn't know how to take me and my buddies. We were all into Monty Python and Saturday Night Live and SCTV and Mel Brooks.
Hart, tell me something. Are they mean-spirited comic books?
My sense of humor tends to be mean-spirited. It's very much a blend of Mel Brooks and Monty Python on crack.
But you go into the grotesque a little bit with victim scenes, don't you?
Not really, no.
It's pretty cool, and you know, we live in an amazing age of media.
Yeah, we do. Everything is there, everything is accessible, and, you know, standing on the shoulder of giants type thing where there's been so much creative work, and if you even dive into comics and illustration art, there's a well of amazing, talented minds.
And then travel. Like, I got to be down in Mexico. I was brought out to lecture at several universities in, like, Mexico City and Tlaxcala, and we did, like, a 9-day tour, you know, through Mexico, lecturing at these universities about poetry, about artwork, about standing up to power, standing up to authority. And when I was down there, it was astounding how many talented artists. I got to go to a comic book convention called Utopia. And so we're there, and I was in the same building as the president of Mexico back then. And I got to open up as a spoken word performer because I'm a poet. And that's the other thing, is I'm a world-renowned poet. I'm known worldwide for my poetry, and my poetry was for sale in the Hot Topic stores in the mall.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made
penetration. I made it.
Yeah.
So I've had a really big and varied career, and I loved comics, and I drew my own comics and sold them because my mom worked for the Department of Public Aid in Illinois. So she was like the welfare lady, and so she had access to these. At that point in time, they weren't really tracking the copies.
Yeah.
So my mom would copy my comic books, and I'd sell them to people at school.
So you started young. Boneyard was, you know,
it was
before
like
it was Boneyard.
Warp Comics, Action Comics, you know, King Kong Comics, and I grew up with Marvel and DC. You know, that's what I grew up with. And then also, I'm really smart, so my parents are well-read. So in my household, my mom and dad were serious readers. They both had degrees in psychology. And so we always had books around. We always had stuff to read.
So you just want to sensationalize based on fact?
Well, that's what I'm interested in. I read that, and then I just kind of, it gives me ideas, and I just kind of go. I don't know where the ideas come from. I just know what I feed my mind, and then it just comes.
And so I always just devoured everything. I devoured everything to get my hands on.
You know, and to me that actually makes sense. So, for example, with comics, you were interested in drawing. You obviously, you cultivated a talent in writing, but you obviously had an interest in it back then. And comics, you know, is a way to use every single piece of that.
Yeah.
And just kind of apply it.
Yeah. And so, I lettered my own books.
Oh, even a letterer.
I did the lettering too, you know, and I did all kinds of stuff with Boneyard. As computers came into the game, like I'm one of the last people that was doing print. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Offset printing. And I did cut and paste work. We had to glue things together and,
Zipatone.
Yeah, Zipatone.
Yeah.
And so one of my main characters that we're going to see some artwork for is called Bill the Bull. And that's the guy right there. And the funny thing about Bill the Bull is I started drawing him freshman year of high school. And I got lucky. This is going to sound... When my mother passed and I had to go through the house, she kept all my comics from when I was little.
Of course she did.
So she had a big
it's a boy's
box,
work.
Yeah, with all those comics I drew as a kid. And I'm like...
That's beautiful.
I don't even remember drawing 31 issues of Gemini.
11 pages each.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, they were like 11 pages each.
Yeah,
and I drew 31 issues, and I'm like, geez, I don't even remember doing this book. And my friends, we'd all get together and lie down on the ground and draw comics together. Super Steve and Super Hart. One of the reasons that Boneyard Press's artwork was so varied and so good is because since I have a degree in art, I was the art director. I had a friend that I published with, Joe Monks, and we did a lot of work together. He did Night Cry. He worked with Joe Linsner when they first did Cry for Dawn. And so Joe and I had a working relationship, very close for a long time.
Would you reach out to people that you saw their work? Would they come to you?
Well, I got really lucky because, I was an omnivore, and so I read Pacific Comics. I read all the Jack Kirby Fourth World stuff through
Silver
DC.
Star.
And I was omnivorous, so I would go to flea markets and I would buy everything to get my hands on. And at the comic shop, they had a box with the covers ripped off, and they were 10 cents each. So I went bananas. Yeah, 10 cents each. Because with newsstand distribution, that's what they would do with returns. You'd rip the cover off and send that back and get your money back. And you weren't supposed to be selling these things. So my buddy, in fact, it's funny because the guy that was one of the kids that was at the shop that I met is a guy named Ben. Ben, his real name's Ben Lewis, but it's Benoit. And he owns the best tattoo shop in Chicago, Deluxe Tattoo. And he supplied artists to Miami Ink and LA Ink.
Okay.
And Ben is an amazing artist. He's super smart, great guy. And he and I knew each other, and we had a friend of ours that also worked at the comic store that I went to grade school with. His name is Dan Madsen. And Dan was the publisher of North Star, which was the publisher of Faust.
Oh.
So I was there when Faust started.
I know Faust the comic. I have
the comic.
One of the portfolios from Faust.
Yeah, well, I knew Tim and Dave from that very first weekend.
Wow.
When I was like 18.
And here's another example even behind us. This page here. I mean, finding an artist isn't even always...
He was a bouncer where I worked. That's Larry Sanders. Larry was, we used to joke, Bouncer Man! Are you in trouble, Hart? Get Bouncer Man! I'm Larry, I can handle this! And Larry was a really good painter. Larry actually painted a bunch of covers for us. And the cool thing that's interesting is he drew Bill as if he was more black. And Larry's a black fella. So it was interesting as I worked with different artists on the characters because they all had their own interpretation. And Bill the Bull was everybody's favorite. All the guys loved to do Bill the Bull, but it was difficult to publish because he never sold that well. Everybody loved it. They loved the character. They loved to draw him. And so I got to see it was really exciting to see what these other artists were going to do.
To it.
Yeah, and so Larry, he brought more of a blackness to the character. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
It was interesting to see how these guys all drew him. Yeah.
And I'm honestly, this is actually a well done piece of work. His face there, I feel the emotion. I feel, I can feel it.
And it's done
Puts out a feeling.
It's done from some photo ref. That's me.
Oh, this guy here?
Yeah, that's me. Because when I drew the book, my buddy when I drew it in high school, my best friend was a guy named Bill Parcham. And Bill was bigger than me, and he had a bad perm. And so Bill was a lot bigger than me, and he could run faster than me. He could sprint, but I could run longer.
Okay, I'm the opposite.
I started drawing the Bill the Bull comics in algebra class because I was bored. So he was Bill the Bull, and he wore a belt that said, "Here's the beef," and he was a superhero, and I was his partner. But then when I started doing the comic book, and my other artists started drawing him, they all thought I was Bill the Bull.
And who was Bill the Bull? Is he every bit?
I morphed into Bill. I became the character because I looked at these guys and I'm like, I'm running around in leather pants. I do martial arts. I'm drinking Jack Daniels.
I'm Bill the Bull.
I'm crazy and I'm a maniac and I'm doing judo and jiu-jitsu and I'm lifting my butt off, and I'm wearing combat boots with spikes in them. I'm from the south side of Chicago. I love Wendy's hamburgers. You guys, you sons of bitches. You sons of bitches, you're right, I'm Bill the Bull, damn it!
In case you missed it, this week I want to recommend Bill the Bull from Boneyard Press. This is a hard-nosed detective story. If you're into like the daredevil stuff, when he's very rough and tumble, but you're kind of sick of all the costumes and all that, check this out. It's suggested for mature readers because of the language primarily and some of the violence, but Boneyard pulls no punches, and you should check it out.
Bill the Bull, the book was nasty in the good sense of the word, but hey, it's Boneyard Press. What did you expect?
There was a writer that has been working on my biography. And so Lance came out to Lake Geneva, and he was funny. He's like, Hart, you're Lake Geneva's rock star. He went with me to all the bars and stuff. And it's when I had that big fur pimp coat.
I remember it, a pink flare, or I think...
It didn't have pink.
Oh.
That's my nails.
But
he came out and hung out, and so it was him that was like, Hart, and he wrote for me in the day. I broke him into the business. I broke a lot of talent into the business because I liked it. I thought it was fun. I liked giving people the opportunity to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and again, like during that time, so again, I think you started Boneyard Press in the early 90s.
It was 1991, and the way I was able to do it was because Dan was already publishing North Star, and Faust was a success. It was a hit. And so Dan had an office in like Blue Island where we grew up. I grew up in Blue Island, Illinois on the south side. So Dan was already publishing. So in the summer when I would come back from college, I'd go work with Dan. I'd be packing mail order, and I'd be looking at pages and meeting the artists.
You got to peek into the creative endeavors going on in there, and that would be intriguing.
And so Dan and this other guy, Mark Bernal, Big B we called him, amazing artist, they taught me how to do it. They gave me a literal list of these are all the distributors. Here's the phone numbers. Here's what you got to do.
Yeah, here's
this
how you
is
go
the
from art to
solicitation.
print.
Yeah, here's a printer. I'll help you. And so Mark Bernal really helped me, and Dan helped me figure it out because we were all in love with making comics. That was what it was all about, making cool comics, and that's still what it's all about. The only reason I got back into the industry is I had the itch.
I get that.
I had the itch, and it was 2020 during the lockdown, and people thought the business was going to disappear. And a lot of my friends are trying to get me to crowdfund and bring the books back. And I was resisting it. But then when they thought the whole world was going to hell in a handbasket, I'm like, hell's coming.
It's time we bring it back.
It's time we come back. And it was 30 years later, because I started in 1991. So it's 30 years later, and they're still talking about my work. That's the really crazy thing.
Well, again, during the time to me it makes sense. You know, back in the day, again, independent publishers weren't actually, there was the main two, you know, there's DC, Marvel,
Sure.
And then obviously you've clashed.
But no, there was First Comics, which did Grimjack, and they did Star Slayer. Well, Pacific Comics did Star Slayer. There was a ton, and there was Eclipse, and then, you know, people, like when the cartoonist kayfabe guys just read out loud my book, Kill Image. And people think that I had some kind of problem with Image, or I bought their books. I read their books. I love Savage Dragon. I still like Savage Dragon.
As a person that enjoys comics, you know.
Spawn was interesting. I bought Spawn. I checked out all their stuff. I didn't really like Rob Liefeld stuff, but it just wasn't my thing.
I'm not going to lie, I'll say it. It's not my thing either.
It's not my thing. So when I did Kill Image, and here's the weird thing.
A lot of the 90s art, actually.
The artist drew me in the book. That's not in the script. I did not put that. In fact, Boneyard doesn't compete with Image. Boneyard never competed with that audience because we do stuff from Hell's Gator. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're not doing Shadowhawk, guys. We're not doing your cute little spandex stuff, which I like. I like it, you know.
Yeah, but that's
not
like
what we're
movie
doing.
Studios, you know. You're
Friday the 13th,
yeah,
baby.
exactly.
I'm Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not competing with the Avengers.
It's not. And
the Avengers
God bless
audience,
them both.
Yeah,
you know, and each should exist.
Yeah, I think there's room on the stage for everybody.
Well, it's like you said even before. You know, like the people who are reading you are the guys in Slayer and the guys. There is a unique audience that will appeal to each unique thing. Mm-hmm. And it should exist, needs to exist. Mm-hmm. And that's why Boneyard Press, I mean, to this day, does still have an impact. There's people that follow
It has
it.
a gravitas.
It doesn't
you know?
stay.
And I walked away from this. Like in the year 2004, the industry had been destroyed. So direct distribution was wrecked.
Bust.
And it was a bust. Everybody was going belly up. I went through bankruptcy court in the year 2000 because I owed about $115K in year 2000 money on publishing, and I owed some artists money. So if anybody, there was a guy who went online, he was trying to claim that I owed him money, and I'm like, I put out your book in 2003 and we sold 150 copies. What money do you think you're owed?
Okay. Yeah, who does?
Dude, what do you think? And me and Trike were laughing. We were laughing our butts off. Who? The thousands you're owed?
Yeah.
Because we both knew the industry was wrecked. That's when Brian Pulido went under. And I knew Brian Pulido and Billy Tucci before they really got their go. I remember being at a show and we were all sitting there and I was broke. My fan was buying my dinner. It was like a Chinese restaurant. And we were at some show. I can't remember which one. Might have been Philly. And it was a dog. And I didn't have any dough. I didn't sell shit that day. My fan bought my dinner, and I'm there with Billy and Brian. You know, it's a very small group, so you know everybody.
You do.
You know them, and so you get to meet them at shows. You know, and I'm a social person, and so I made a point at shows to walk around and see who's there and shake hands with everybody. Hi, I'm Eric Stratton. Damn glad to meet you, president of Animal House. That's my shtick.
Yeah.
You know, that's my deal. So I evolved that personality at shows. I learned it because I saw that artists that just sat at a show and just sat in their sketchbook and did nothing,
What's some people
didn't
that actually
sell.
stand out to you at that time that were in even the smaller publishing houses, or, you know, just people that you were watching that you were coinciding?
One of the
with
things I really
the
was
journey
watching
with?
was White Wolf Publishing, who did a lot of the role-playing games. And they did Vampire the Masquerade, and they had a werewolf game. And I would recruit from their artists. Like, there's a guy named Tim Bradstreet. And Timothy, most people know him from his Punisher covers. He does a ton of photorealistic Punisher covers. With a guy standing in front of a brick wall with a shadow with a slam.
He's done some Hellraiser covers.
Yes, Hellraiser.
Does that work for Magic the Gathering?
Tim, it nearly broke him, but Tim actually did a full story for a Clive Barker story for one of the epic. Did they do an epic line?
So
There was a line.
there was an epic actual issue of Hellraiser, which was like a compilation of stories from different
Yeah, and
artists.
Tim did that because I know Tim's process, and it's laborious. You know, and he
It's
does
like
a lot of photographs.
photorealistic. At least his recent stuff is kind of photorealistic.
Oh no, that's how it's always been. So what
Okay.
Tim would do is Tim had his various group of models, and he would photograph them. He'd blow it up. He'd put it on a light board. He'd put vellum on it. He'd pencil over that. Then he would ink over that on the light board.
Actually, when you going back, you know, like there's the Marvel process of like Stan Lee would have the artist actually. He'd give a concept for a story. And then the artist would
This was
go
Stanley and Jack
draw.
Kirby, or Stanley and Ditko.
Yeah, and it goes back. They call it the Marvel way.
Yeah.
But for
And it's a
your
thing.
Yeah, for yours in Boneyard, would you have like a full script? Would you have an artist start with a concept? And what
It
was
depended on the
kind of
creator I
process?
was working with, because every artist needs something different. I've learned this as a director. Like, I'm a successful director. I direct features, films. I actually directed porn too. I direct commercials. I've directed so much stuff and a ton of shows for American Horrors. So every actor needs something different. I've just learned that. Like,
So just
they
through
need-
conversations or just the project
you figure it out,
itself?
like with a new artist who hasn't done a lot of stuff. You kind of got to work with them a little bit more. You're gonna
Yeah,
want
guide.
Well, I have a couple different script ways I do it. Like with John Cassaday, like I had a really good working relationship with John Cassaday. Boneyard Press is where he started. He started I think his first published work is Juju Eyes, which is a Nick Stone, that's the character from Bill the Bull, solo story. And it's actually was published too in negative burn through Caliber in their 50th issue. And so John just was a natural. And so I can write a script like page 1, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. And you put the dialogue in there and you write the setup to what it is.
Like a script,
what's in the
actually.
room. It's just like a script.
Yeah.
And then what I started doing with artists that already knew how to break down a story that I could trust. like John, one of the greatest things that I haven't been able to finish that I want to is we wrote a screenplay for my character Dark Angel. It's called The Quiet Demon.
First book published by
Boneyard Press.
Boneyard Press.
And it's also the title I sued Marvel and beat him on. Marvel Comics, that's another story where I sued them over the title Dark Angel for copyright and
Next
trademark
interview.
infringement. Yeah, next interview, guys. And the Hells Angels helped me with my court case, the motorcycle gang.
Mm-hmm.
So,
One and only.
oh yeah. So with John, I had the script for the Dark Angel movie. I just gave him the script. And I let him break it down.
Illustrate.
Here you go, buddy. And he broke it down. He knew where to end the scene. I didn't tell him. So it'd be like 10
Yeah.
pages, 20 pages,
Which
15
scene
pages.
demanded 7 panels? Which scene demanded...
And I
break it
trusted
into
John.
3.
And I had trusted John, and I had worked with John and was watching him grow exponentially so fast. And so I just was like, I could trust him with this. I don't have to. Like, I've got a new book coming up. I'll go and announce it. The next new comic I'm doing is called Growing Up Eilish.
Eilish?
It's going to be about Billie Eilish.
Oh, I did not predict that.
Yeah, I decided that, Hart, you're known for this Boneyard stuff, but you're capable of a lot more, and your life is pretty insane. So we've been toying with a Hart Fisher comic. We were talking about Hart Fisher tales, and Kevin Eastman came up with the best title.
Do tell.
Hart D. Fisher's 10-ton erection. And Kevin wants to draw the cover. He goes, I want to read that book, Hart D. Fisher's 10-ton erection.
I would say yes.
Me too. And the idea of that book is artists would tell stories about me. I wouldn't tell them
That
what
could
to
be
say.
intriguing, actually, because
Yes.
it's not just your perspective.
It's their perspective.
It is.
Yes.
I love that. It's
And
like
that's
an
exciting.
anthology of perspectives.
He's no stranger to controversy. Hero Illustrated called him the most dangerous man in comics.
Running around with me is a party, and I'm a big kid in a good way. I'm a big kid. I'm a lot of fun, but I'm a wild-ass big kid. And you better hold on, because this lion's going to buck around and run off wherever I
Just
run.
hold on. You'll see.
Yeah, that's the thing about, well, how did you meet this guy? How did you meet that guy? I go into Go-Cores one night, and Roddy Piper's there, and I get to be grappling partners with Piper.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
I come into class one night, and they're like, okay, guys, line up. Who's here tonight? We've got the judo team from Germany. The Olympic judo team from Germany is here to teach you guys some tricks. Holy shit.
I'm here and I'm ready.
Okay, who's this guy? This guy tonight, he trains all the bodyguards for the president of France, or the prime minister, whatever it is. So that's my late wife Waka was always like, Hart, your life is crazy. Do you know how special this is? And I'm like, this is just my life.
I've learned to dance.
Yeah, I like to dance.
Yeah.
I love
See?
dancing. I
And that's-
really like to
it's part of
dance.
it. You got to dance.
And I
You have to
pursue
dance.
what I'm excited by. Whatever excites me, I run it down. Like, as a creator, I grew up reading all comics. I grew up reading all of them. I loved them. I liked DC. I liked Marvel. I liked all the independents. I just loved it. And I liked the creators. And so when I got to get into the business, it was wonderful to get to meet these people. It was wonderful. It was a dream come true, And my favorite comic book character was Master of Kung Fu. Shang-Chi.
Oh.
Favorite character.
I know some
And-
artists that have done that too, that are like Dan Day.
Yes.
And Gene Day.
Gene Day and Dan Day, I was a huge fan of their work, and especially Paul Gulacy and Mike Zeck. I loved Mike Zeck's work.
Mike Zeck, a illustrious career, long
Yeah.
career.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from all these different artists, and the thing that really helped me the best as a comic book artist, the thing that freed me, was getting to read all the Japanese comics. Lone Wolf and Cub changed my art style.
Yeah, and to this day, it's still an acclaimed work. I mean, ultimately, and I get why. When you read it, there's a lot of the old timeless creators, and again, even during your area and your era, and the people that you pulled in, I mean, there's a lot of amazing talents that were producing, that were putting things out, storytellers, the writers, the artists, and that's the arena you got to play in.
Yeah. And know everybody, and goof around. I had one artist, Buzz Stola, hustler, playboy centerfold, off my lap at a party at one of these shows. I mean, so much crazy stuff happened. You know, you mentioned Kyle Holtz. You know, Kyle did a couple of different covers for me, for Boneyard Press. He did the Dark Angel #2 cover with Tim Bradstreet, and he also did a Bill the Bull cover, Bill the Bull Blowtorch Kiss. And it was always great. And like writing for Chaos Comics, I really enjoyed writing for them because it was a challenge, because they were more all ages. So as a creator, I started endeavoring to take a challenge. Can you write a children's story, Hart? Let's do it. Vampire Hunters Club for Nightmare Theater from Chaos. Can you do a Christian comic book? Sure I can. Soldier of God. And it became a challenge to stretch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, every single, aspect or avenue, you could tell a tale.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, my introduction to the Japanese comics was definitely Frank Miller's Ronin. Frank Miller I was a huge fan of Frank Miller's work. I was a big fan of John Byrne. I was a big fan of George Perez, of course. And we mentioned the Master of Kung Fu artists. And I liked Master of Kung Fu because I knew I was never going to be a rich kid like Batman. I was never going to be bitten by a radioactive spider, but God damn it, I could be Master of Kung Fu. And so I pursued that, and I got to pursue all these. That's what I've done with my life, is pursued whatever excited me, whatever thrilled me, and I pursued it with a passion. And so art was that way, and Frank Miller's Ronin led me to Lone Wolf and Cub, and then a bunch of others.
And carrying that over into now, you're at Boneyard Press. You've decided to carry this vision on.
Mm-hmm.
You now are in a position in which you have to find artists, find books, find material.
That was easy.
Tell me about it.
Here's what's funny, okay. I'm doing a horror TV channel. And when I mean that, American Horrors is the best horror television channel there is. We're better than everybody.
It is the only one like it that I know.
There's nothing else like it. Shudder doesn't hold a candle to it. Now, granted, I don't have the mainstream stuff. I hunted down stuff, and I signed a lot of independent stuff. So that's why we've got Slayer music videos. Danzig gave me uncut, rare cuts of his stuff to put on. Thank you, Glenn. You rock, man.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. And so I'm doing a TV channel. But when I announced that I'm coming back to publishing, I got buried with submissions.
I believe that. Again,
they came out of the woodwork, and I'm like, guys, I'm just reprinting right now.
You just put out the beacon. Ultimately the beacon was raised.
Chunk.
And there is a, and again, this is where your eye comes in and things like that, where you were, catching the people that you saw that had talent and bringing them in and actually
like
putting their work out. Like Larry.
His paintings are great. Larry's an amazing artist, and that's you would find people. There's an artist here who works around the corner from here at the CBD store, and I'm going to hire her for Poems for the Dead Volume 3, because what I'm doing now is I'm reprinting the books, and I love the fact that there's this interest in process now, because I have everything, and I'm all too willing to share. I like sharing, and I want to help the next generation of artists be great. I want you to be great.
I actually really do.
And I believe in all of it, and I just think that artists need to avoid the labels. Stop identifying yourself as this label. And stop, you said focus. Stop with all the social causes, man. Stop with the virtue signaling.
Tell a tale.
Focus on your story.
Heart. Yeah, strike a heart.
If you have something to say, put it in the book. And also, I would say I'm sick of this notion that, like, what the hell? Why isn't Ben Grimm smoking cigars anymore? What is with all this social conditioning happening in comics?
Well, life, the grit.
It's crap. It's crap.
You should actually include, to me, honestly, storytelling and writing, and you look at authors.
It's
and
a
you look
reflection
at
of your life around you, or a reflection of your fantasy of where you want to go.
And that's the way you actually make the largest impact, is to tell a tale in which it is applicable to individuals and people and life experiences, and it tells you something. It strikes a chord within you. And that is why the comic medium itself actually is unique to me, because it is panel-to-panel storytelling with the writing combined. So it is both visual and it is written. And when you combine those two things, it is an absolutely unique medium. It's not tied to a budget in the sense that, like, if you wanted to create a scene in which God was creating earth and demons were storming.
You could do it.
You could do it. An artist could draw it for the same price that they could draw just a conversation.
And I gotta say, it's pretty cool to see social media has freed a lot of artists. Now, it's knocked some down, but it's great to see like an artist who did The Badger, Stephen Butler. I'm a big fan, and they're making their living on commissions. For me, in the back of the day, it was wonderful to work with George Perez. And the thing is, like, people tried to pigeonhole me as some kind of underground publisher. And I'm like, no, I'm a mainstream publisher, guys. I was in all the stores. I'm in all the catalogs. I sold thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of books. Thousands of books.
Yeah.
And I toured relentlessly. I overprinted. I did it on purpose because you can't grow your audience if you don't have anything to sell them.
That's true. I mean, that is the comic bust sin, cardinal sin.
You have to get out there and you have to get your product in front of new readers. And stores these days, it's tricky. You can't rely on social media. You know, there's so much weird censorship going on with social media, and
each website has its own gatekeepers.
They hide behind an algorithm. It's not an algorithm, assholes. It's a
choice.
human being is making these decisions.
Click.
I don't like Hart Fisher.
Yeah.
Click. I don't like this guy. Click. Oh, are you talking about politics? Click. Are you having a polite civic discussion with somebody as an adult? We can't have you comparing notes while we're lying to you.
I don't personally believe in censorship, but don't sell the comic book. Don't give them 1 penny.
If you can say that, then you do believe in censorship, because that's the whole word of the whole problem right there.
Well, being a figurehead of a publishing house, being the man behind it, again, you do have to have a passion for the medium. And not only that, like sometimes you will put out, stuff that you think there's different reasonings behind things. This one might hit, this one might not.
I think in the business, as far as like one guy goes, I think only Brian Pulido and Billy Tucci were able to be that one-man band, head of the network, head of the company. I think Bill and Brian really nailed that down, and I did it in my way too. I think I nailed it, but I think I was more experimental, way more experimental.
I could agree. Just looking at the line, even the art,
the
story topics.
And I liked experimenting, and I was excited by new art styles and excited by new kinds of art, and like it was a trip to have a Japanese wife and to go to Japan and be at her childhood home, and her dad has his own copies of Gol 13 on the shelf and trade paperbacks, the manga, and be like, wow, this is normal for you guys to have this library here, where in my age, the thing was they kept trying to make it comics for kids. Well, comics are an adult medium. They've always been. Before the Comics Code Authority came in and screwed everything up, comics were the most well-read medium during World War II. The G.I. Joes ran around the world with comic stuffed in their back pockets. Comic books were the #1 read thing.
And again, the medium, it has a power. It has a strength. It has a unique way to tell a tale.
Well, it's art. Like, look at, I've been to the Louvre. I've been to the Louvre in Paris, I'm lucky enough that some of my work was sold in the gift store at MoCA in Los Angeles, at the Los Angeles, Museum of Art. Thank you, Luca Fisher. He lined that up. I've been blessed.
Luca gets it.
Well, we all help each other. And so that's a thing that, artists have to understand. They really have to get it that nobody owes you a living.
No one says, if you're going to do a job right. I do. People, I get lots of stuff like, he paid me $5, he got $5 worth of job. They paid me $15,000, they got $15,000 worth of fight. Well, that attitude is not always so good.
Yeah, well, in college they did a thing, for any of the artists at home, what I could tell, some tips for people that want to draw comics. One of the best things you could do, one of the best exercises, they're called gesture drawings. And what you'll do is you work with a person. The idea is you're trying to capture the gesture of the body. You're just trying to capture the pose, like the shoulders and the hips and the hands. And you'll do the pose for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 3 minutes. And you just have a pad of paper. You just almost like automatic writing. And that really helped me get my anatomy down to be able to draw comics. And it was the notion of Japanese art has this art form where it's the perfect brushstroke. And the art in Still Dead, Andy Lang does a lot of that kind of work. And I love Andy's work, it's fantastic. But I got interested in that perfect brushstroke. And so I got really into that with my art, so it changed my art. So the early Dark Angel issues have so much of that influence of the Japanese and that beauty of the line.
The thick brush, the calligraphy-esque.
And then there came in the days of Image with the whole blood splatter thing where you had a toothbrush and you're like, and you're making it splatter. Yeah, you're trying to do that, yeah.
Or even stars, that's the way they would make stars. With whiteout, they put whiteout on a toothbrush.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
You get kind of like an even, but random-esque splatter.
And then it was interesting, too, when I started dealing with some artists. It might have been Kyle Holtz or it might have been Kelly Jones. I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how they'll go back into the blacks with white ink and go over it to get more lines in there. And I was like, okay, cool. I like that. I like gouache. I like watercolor. I like it all.
Gouache to me still impresses me, actually. It's better than watercolor.
And I did printmaking, where you used acid to etch the image on a copper plate, and did printmaking. So I had printmaking courses, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. I like the act of creation. I like the experimental thing, and it's actually really exciting to get back and do art again. Sold at once from college. Lazarus Pits. Artwork. This is an etching glued to a canvas. American Horror's background drawing. I gotta tell everybody at home, everybody who's watching this, all you kids, do not do digital art.
Yeah, you can't sell it.
There's no original. Yeah. There's no original.
This was done by a hand.
That's done by a hand, and there's only one of them. There's one of them, and you could see the strokes, and you could feel an energy come off of this. If you have a digital file, you never have an original.
Ever.
Ever.
The monoprint does not translate to me.
And NFTs
doesn't
are bullshit.
inspire the same...
NFTs are crap.
It is.
They're crap.
It is.
They're a shuck and
that's what these are. They're monoprints, you know.
Yeah, but that's a real thing that can be passed down. It can hang on the wall of the museum, and it's got the strokes. When you go to the Louvre and you get to see a Titian, if I'm saying it right, or a Raphael, or you get to see the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is a small painting, but a lot of the Titians are huge paintings. They're massive, and you could look at the brush strokes. And you can see the light play as the sun goes down. They're physical, man. They're physical. And some of them have a smell to them. You'll never get that digitally. You will never. You're screwing yourselves, guys. My sense of time is different than other people.
What do you have, like Hawaii, like island time? Or
she said that I'm on spirit time. She's like, you live like an Indian. You're on spirit time. You're going to get there when you get there. You know, and I know what's important. You know what I mean? People are important. How you treat somebody in your life is important. Like and
even, you know, you mentioned like germinating, or the way I kind of phrased it was pollinating artists and influencers and things like that. And that is also a beautiful thing that when you do it and you see it expand out from, for example, like even Boneyard Press, the people that have gone off and to do other things.
Oh, they've all gone on. I have a great eye for talent, you know, like Gerard with My Chemical Romance, or Billie Eilish, you know, 4-time Grammy winner. I'm her first director. I worked with film historians in LA. So there was a store in LA called Eddie Brandt's Matinee. And it's one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite places. And it's one of the last of the VHS stores. And they have TV shows, they have everything. So I was friends with a lot of the guys that worked there. And so I'm friends with so many horror directors. I mean, I'm really blessed. My life is filled with creative, interesting people. And so I get to work, I've worked with almost all my heroes. I've gotten to meet my heroes, work with my heroes. I've gotten to hang out and have drinks with, like, Andrew Vox was one of my favorite hard-boiled writers. I looked up to him so much. Eugene Izzy, who was murdered in Chicago, a major Chicago crime writer from the 80s. Being friends with Tim Bradstreet, you know, I really looked up to Tim's work back then. Getting to work with so many people, it was really amazing to have this creative life, to be able to get out there and work with your favorite writers, your favorite artists, your favorite musicians. Getting to work with Glenn, with Danzig, awesome, man.
It is awesome. And to have the product at the end, the thing that you guys did.
Yeah.
The culmination of the enterprise.
And to know you influenced him.
Yeah.
Or to have Glenn be like, yeah, good job.
And being a publisher, you are you're the car, you're the vehicle through which these things actually get put together and then are put out.
Yeah, I assembled the books. I put the books together. I did most of the logos. I handled the printing. I did all the advertising. I handled all the shipping. I did all the mail order. I'm kind of a maniac.
Even the shipping.
Yeah, even the shipping, all the mail order. I'm still doing the mail order. So when you guys at home order your stuff, because I need you to order. I had my tooth pulled last week. I cracked a molar in half. I need everybody to go buy my stuff because I have a giant, big-ass dental bill.
And each package hand-touched.
Hand-touched by me. Now, I've kept my balls off it. Just hand-touched. No ball touching, just hand-touched.
Unless you ask.
Unless they ask.
I mean, it is a great medium, actually, also to catch everything from kids to an imagination. And as you grow older, comics can grow with you. Because, comics, even from your poetry or any issue or topic that you do want to touch on, comics can do it. And with all your work, I mean, everything from horror to whatever, psychological intrigue and, everything that's there.
Christian superhero comics, Soldier of God.
Yeah, I mean, you can do and touch everything.
Yeah.
And, Boneyard Press, I know, has a breadth of work. And again, you got to bring in, and with that eye, cultivate an impressive little community and an output of
It was an obsession.
Material.
It was an utter obsession. And also, I was kind of dented because starting publishing, I never expected the Jeffrey Dahmer book to blow up the way it did. To me, it was just another, bio book. My dad had those Time Life books, the Time Life assassination book.
Yeah,
the Time Life greatest secret fraternal organizations, you know what I mean?
You can buy them at the grocery store, honestly.
Yeah, so I grew up reading those things, and I didn't think twice about it. I went to the public library and got a bunch of books about Dahmer out from the library, and I hired a newspaper illustrator to draw the book so I could keep it dry.
Sure.
I knew it was a distasteful subject matter, so I tried to handle a distasteful subject the best way I could. And so when the news media got a hold of it, they completely lied about the book. There's nothing that bad in the book.
Yeah,
they
it
lied
probably
about
wasn't about the book. And that's what, you mentioned that controversy and such things, it's very difficult to actually engineer.
Every time I tried to create a controversy, it failed. Whenever I tried to.
Yeah.
Because the Dahmer thing was a complete fluke.
Like when you put out a comic, you are the creator, you make something, you put your creative endeavors into it, and then you put it out there.
Yeah.
And that's where it happens.
I would like to know what possessed you to write a comic book about. I mean, do you think it's funny? Did you just wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to make a comic book about something that brings up the most emotional trauma that anyone could ever experience?
I was looking around, I was seeing, God, this guy's in People magazine and they're making him this celebrity. Well, he's a piece of scum, Let's show the world exactly the facts, not deviate from the facts, don't exploit it, just totally straight what it is. And this is for adults. This was not a kid's book. This was not a funny book. This was a serious book.
And every time, and they got paid to be on those shows. I wasn't paid. No one paid me.
Well, you had a stance that you wanted to take, ultimately.
It was the only way to get the truth out. Because what would happen is, people think cancel culture's new. It's not new.
It is not.
No.
It's just more...
the communist blacklist in Hollywood, the House of Un-American Activities. This kind of censorship in our country, the target just changes.
We like to ask good and decent people all across America. Don't put Hart's comic book on the shelves. No. Don't put the videos on the shelves. Don't put his book on the shelf. And don't buy them.
We might find what he publishes absolutely repugnant. But here in America, you're allowed to publish and print whatever you want. What right does a group have to go and try and ban the publication of any type of literature.
How did you interpret the controversy as it happened? Like, were you at first
Stunned. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you guys are out and out lying about this book. Because right in the first page it says, I hate serial killers, this guy's a scumbag, you know, I'm very unhappy with the way the media is glamorizing him, and they continue to do it to this day. That Netflix special was disgusting. You know what I mean? It really kind of glorified him in many, many ways.
Let's go to calls. Pinyon Crest, California. Hello.
Yes, Larry. My question is to the creator of the comic strip,
Hart Fisher.
And I just have to ask this gentleman: are things really so desperate that you have to make depravity a way of life? I mean, you look like you're a creative gentleman, and I weep for America to think that that you need to stoop so low and make something commercial out of this horrible crime.
Hart?
Well, basically, the comic book was a reaction to Dahmer's celebrity status. We were talking about the Nancy Reagan, Kitty Kelly biography, and we decided that Boneyard should do something like that. And the more I researched about Dahmer, the more I saw he was in People magazine's top 25 most intriguing people of 1991. And I wanted to show the monster, the child molester, so people really knew what a piece of scum this guy was.
They got their facts wrong. They did shit wrong. They got stuff wrong on purpose. You know, I don't even know why they dragged me into the story. I don't even know why they dragged my comic books into this thing again 30 years later, you know. And so I got sued by the victims' families. So they sued me over a privacy law and a city law, like in Milwaukee. And it's like, A, the dead don't have privacy, ladies and gentlemen, and B, I didn't have any private knowledge. All the stuff I got was from the public library.
Yeah, it was public knowledge.
It was public knowledge. So,
and, you know, that was a moment, like, you know, being a child that grew up at that time, I have distinct memories, actually, of me and all the other children in the area being called inside. And this is when they had identified him, knew him, but he wasn't caught. So there was that little sliver of time in which, you know, there was a large public impact to the whole thing. So writing about it and telling, you know, an aspect of it seems actually a natural thing for people to do it, even as individuals and even as like a societal thing.
Well, it's part of the world. I don't pretend this is a happy-go-lucky, nobody ever gets hurt world, you know. I mean, people are dying every day. I watch CNN, I see the Bosnia situation, I see what's going on in Somalia. This kind of stuff happens every day here in America. This is nothing new.
I'm the guy whose work will be on Phil Anselmo from Pantera's shelf. I'm the guy that the guys in Slayer read. I'm that creator. So I may not be known by the mainstream,
but those that know.
Yeah, I have a philosophy about leading and leadership. It isn't about how many followers you have. It's about how many leaders you influence. And that's how I work.
I like that. I mean, it's ultimately then, it's how many people you impact to the degree that they either rise or strive or make or create. And then that pollinates, and on.
And it's a hell of a thing to realize that you have, like me and Glenn Danzig, have had a great working relationship as artists together, because people forget Glenn can draw. And so I have worked with Glenn as the managing editor of his comic company, Verotic, and I co-wrote the most famous story that they ever did, A Taste of Cherry, that is banned in Oklahoma as obscene material to this day.
To this day.
To this day, yeah. And Glenn won't go near that book. He won't go near it. He doesn't want anything to do with that story, you know. And again, that wasn't anything that I thought was going to get banned. I grew up reading Stephen King. And I grew up reading, you know, about Charles Manson and all those serial killers and war books and all this inhumanity we do to each other. So when I wrote that story, A Taste of Cherry, co-wrote it.
You were touching upon things that have been touched upon by other artists.
I didn't think twice about it. I didn't think it was going to get seized anywhere. And, you know, I did the other Jeffrey Dahmer books. People are like, why'd you do Dahmer Zombie Squad? Because I had a $10,000 legal bill. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to pay my lawyer $10,000. In 1990
I was about to say, this is 1990
This is 1992 money.
Well, at this point, the Dahmer comic I didn't make a dime. We made about $5,000 in profits and spent $9,300 and change to defend my right to publish the book.
And like all these things, everything from graft, everything to the dark, seedier aspects of life and men and women and life and just everything that here on Earth entails. Boneyard going down a path to tell such tales or depict such things, either with humor or with just even just to depict it for its own sake. Like, is it with any controversy that's there or that could be there? I can't see it as wrong, with any of it.
Well, I grew up.
I almost see it as like
with underground comics. So
right of the art.
For me, I loved Robert Crumb, and I loved the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, and I loved Epic Illustrated that Marvel did.
Me too. I almost have every issue. Yeah. Oh, you do. That's like, yeah.
I loved Fangoria magazine. I grew up in a violent neighborhood, so horror really helped me as a child process fear and deal with stuff.
Actually, and I've always, since I was young, had it. It's still my favorite movie genre. Because when done well, it's actually an amazing thing. It can.
It's a catharsis.
It is. It is. It depicts something that is a fear in all people. It can actually nail a concept that has plagued the psyches of mankind since, again, the beginning of time. And sometimes they do it for play, and sometimes they do it just to have you experience it, to get over it.
Some of the stories I wrote, I was exploring these things and figuring them out for myself. Like, a lot of the poetry is me working through things. And I'm able to channel, like, I channel things, like, shit just comes right through the head. And it's almost like a radio tuner, and it just goes right through. And for me as a creator, I just wanted to make the comic books I'd like to read. And the mantra was, every book must be better than the last. That was the goal. Make it better. Make it better. Yeah.
Guys, and slow incremental improvement.
And like, I did the graphic design, I did all the design. I actually ended up working in advertising, and I worked for an ad agency in LA for many years, and I did packaging and ad design for movies, and I actually did some stuff in adult films, doing packaging for like Vivid Video and stuff. And that was an enormously growing experience to be a graphic designer in a professional field and to do that ad work. So, like, when people watch my television channel, American Horrors, and they're watching it, I did all the logos. I designed everything. I did all the bumpers. I do the voiceover. I program everything. There is no other horror television channel that is from the top down, one man's
it is yours.
Design. Yeah. And so,
by the way, I just have to jump in and say, the American Horrors. What's the URL?
AmericanHorrors.net.
It is an awesome concept. A 24/7 horror streaming service, a streaming channel, avant-garde to classic to stuff you just haven't seen before. To different countries' films. I mean,
and the way I discovered the films is, I lived in LA for 22 years, and I got to live my dreams. That part of the reason people go, how did you get to Lake Diva? Why did you come? Clean air.
Yeah, it summons you back.
I don't hear any gunshots out there. It was safe for my wife to walk the dog at night. I didn't find anybody beaten to a bloody pulp on my doorstep.
No, good lives can be lived here, and 'tis a nice place.
There's a lot of really talented people here. There's a lot of really good artists here, and it goes beyond Dungeons and Dragons. I got to have a friendship with Dieter Sturm. I assembled
Academy Award-winning special effects guy?
Yes, Academy Award-winning. He was my judge at the American Horror Film Fest. And so
he came to my house and made snow once.
Oh, did he?
In the summer.
Oh, that's so cool, man. That's
so I had
awesome.
Academy Award-winning snow.
Dieter, buddy, I love you, man. You're the best. Dieter Sturm. Yeah.